But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get fucking torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies?
Bill Maher keeps calling out people on his own political side, and now his attention has landed on New York's new mayor, Zoran Mandani. Inside the Democratic Party, Mandani is being treated like the shiny new favorite, praised by almost every liberal voice out there, almost everyone except Bill Maher. Maher's take on Zoran's future at the top of the party is harsh, loud, and impossible to ignore. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and let's jump straight into this story with no pauses at all today.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump also won, all moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win.
Maher says the Democratic Party now looks like a house split right down the middle. On one side, there's a growing group that openly flirts with socialism and believes the party should proudly wear that label and everything that comes with it. On the other side are Democrats who won't even say the word socialism out loud because they know how bad it sounds to regular voters outside activist circles. Maher clearly places himself with this second group. He argues that socialism might sound exciting at rallies and on college campuses, but the moment it reaches working class voters in swing areas, it turns toxic. Maher warns that history, both in America and other countries, shows that socialist branding pushes away moderates, independents, and even loyal Democrats who just want stability and common sense. His warning is serious. If the party keeps choosing ideology over reality, it risks shrinking its support and handing future elections to Republicans.
Problem is, Gen Z thinks socialism's wired and capitalism's tired and billionaires are what's for dinner. And who can blame them? If you're 30 and still sharing a bathroom with roommates, capitalism isn't working for you. People will reject any economic system where there's strange hair on the soap. No one wants to be approaching middle age and still writing their name on food before they put it in the fridge. So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will f you. Because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked.
Maher then explains why socialism keeps pulling people in, and to him the reason is pretty simple. He says many people drawn to it are middle-aged Americans who feel stuck, worn out, or left behind by a system that didn't deliver what it promised. For them, socialism starts to feel like a lifeline, a last chance to escape money stress, career failures, and a quiet feeling of defeat. Maher doesn't mock that frustration, he understands it, but he draws a clear line between empathy and illusion. In his view, socialism sells comfort, not real solutions. It promises safety without dealing honestly with human behavior, motivation, or how power actually works. His message is blunt. Socialism has never worked anywhere, at any scale, and there's no reason to believe it suddenly will now. Changing the slogans doesn't change the outcome. It only delays the disappointment.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century. Mess.
Maher says it's easy to look back at history and think people before us just didn't get it, and that with modern knowledge and better intentions, we can finally make it work. Sometimes progress does happen that way, but history also has a habit of repeating itself, especially when the core ideas stay the same. Maher's argument is that socialism hasn't truly changed since it began. The language sounds softer, the branding looks cleaner, but the system underneath is identical. Power stays centralized, incentives get twisted, and control becomes concentrated, and those conditions almost always lead to the same bad results. Maher insists that believing this time is different isn't optimism, it's denial. Ignoring decades of real-world proof doesn't remove the risk, it almost guarantees it. When history keeps sending warning signs, pretending they don't matter is a dangerous gamble.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zoran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
Maher predicts that if Mamdani pushes New York towards socialism, the city could become the next big example of ideological failure. He says the damage wouldn't happen overnight, but it would feel very familiar. Wages would stop growing as businesses slow down or leave. Investment would dry up, and jobs would become harder to find. Already stressed infrastructure would get worse, with unreliable power, crumbling roads, and public services that cost more while delivering less. To cover growing budget holes, taxes would keep going up, squeezing middle-class families and small businesses even harder. Maher says this isn't fear-mongering, it's a pattern that keeps repeating. Wherever socialist ideas take hold, the same problems follow. And New York, he warns, is already expensive and fragile. Adding ideology to dysfunction could turn fixable problems into permanent disasters. His message is clear. It's much easier to stop decline before it starts than to reverse it later.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Maher points to what he calls a textbook example of why socialism keeps failing, using Bernie Sanders' push for single-payer healthcare. The promise sounded simple and appealing. Get rid of private insurers, centralize payments, and make healthcare cheaper, faster, and better for everyone. But Maher says reality crushed that dream. Instead of reducing bureaucracy, single-payer systems often replace many smaller layers with one massive, slow government machine. Costs didn't disappear, they exploded. Wait times increased, choices became limited, and efficiency was replaced by political control. Maher says his criticism isn't about ideology, it's about facts. Good intentions don't erase economic reality or human behavior. When the government becomes the only payer, rationing becomes unavoidable, innovation slows down, and accountability fades. What was sold as a clean solution turned into another warning sign. In Maher's view, the experiment didn't just stumble, it confirmed exactly why socialism falls apart when theory meets real life.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing but more.
Maher then shifts into teacher mode, speaking directly to people who believe socialism can save them personally or save the country. He explains that the United States already includes some socialist elements. Whether people notice or not, programs like Social Security, Medicare, unemployment benefits, and public schools have existed for decades. These programs are meant to act as safety nets, not replacements for the entire economic system. Maher's point is that recognizing these programs doesn't mean embracing full socialism. There's a huge difference between adjusting capitalism and abandoning it altogether. He argues that capitalism, even with its flaws, still drives innovation, growth, and opportunity. Socialism, on the other hand, promises fairness, but often leads to stagnation and control. For Maher, fixing the system makes sense. Tearing it down does not.
They were petrified of COVID, masking 2-year-olds who never would have died from it and keeping schools closed for far too long. They're definitely afraid of their kids, who from time immemorial have always come up with bad ideas. Their kids, thinking up stupid what they do. But parents used to tell them, that's ridiculous. The world doesn't work that way. Not today's parents. They say, you're right, honey. Gender is just a social construct. Please, sometimes your mother and I forget which one of us has the...
Maher then turns his fire toward Democrats themselves, accusing the party of being trapped in fear and hesitation. He says they're terrified of saying the wrong thing, upsetting the wrong group, or calling out bad behavior, even when it comes from their own side. In his telling, that fear has grown so strong they can't correct anyone anymore. Not activists, not co-workers, not even their own kids. Instead of leading, they walk on eggshells. Maher argues this fear has pushed Democrats into non-stop pandering to the far left, a small but loud group obsessed with purity tests and instant outrage. Meanwhile, the party drifts away from what everyday voters actually care about: safety, stability, affordability, and common sense. Maher warns that real leadership requires bravery, not online approval. If Democrats keep governing out of fear, they won't just lose arguments, they'll lose elections.
I mean, I don't know if we're still banning TikTok. That was before we changed the rule in America to Trump decides what's a law. But I know it wouldn't even be an issue if parents would sack up and tell their kids to get off the phone. Democrats are still afraid of the mean girls who police their far-out fringe. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton had a perfect score on LGBTQ issues from the Human Rights Campaign. But when he said, I have 2 little girls, I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, his own campaign manager quit.
Maher says this fear is exactly why so many Democrats go silent when woke ideology comes up. He argues it's not because they truly believe in it, but because they're scared of social media backlash. One wrong word or honest thought, and suddenly the online crowd shows up demanding apologies and punishment. The fear of being labeled, canceled, or endlessly attacked has become a powerful form of control. Instead of speaking honestly, many Democrats choose survival. They nod along, repeat approved phrases, and hope the spotlight never lands on them. Maher sees this as cowardice pretending to be unity. Going with the crowd might feel safe at first, but when the crowd is heading the wrong way, silence becomes part of the problem. His warning is clear. Politics driven by fear doesn't lead to progress. It ends in collapse.
Imagine that. A congressman merely stands up for the liberal principle, the one we used to call, we do still call Title IX, that women get an equal shot in sports. And now it gets you labeled a Nazi. The reason Gretchen Whitmer looked like a toddler playing peekaboo in the Oval Office is she's afraid of the Liz Bratts of the world and the 12 social justice warriors on the internet and what they might tweet to their 7 followers. Alyssa Slotkin calls her party weak and woke. She's right. People vote on instinct. They can smell fear a swing state away, and they'd rather have strong and wrong.
Bill Maher's attack on the Democratic Party is sharp, direct, and brutally honest. He sees a party torn between those flirting with socialism and those who understand its dangers, between chasing ideology and actually governing. Maher warns that socialism, while tempting to people who feel frustrated or left behind, has never worked and never will. It promises fairness and escape, but history shows it delivers control, stagnation, and disappointment. Even America's socialist-leaning programs, like Social Security and Medicare, Obamacare exist inside capitalism, not as replacements for it. Beyond ideology, Maher exposes a party ruled by fear, afraid of offending, afraid of online mobs, and afraid to speak plainly, even to their own people. He says Democrats are chasing a loud fringe while losing touch with everyday voters. Following the herd might feel comfortable, but it leads straight to irrelevance. Maher's warning couldn't be clearer. Without courage, realism, and respect for history, the party risks losing not just elections, but its identity. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.